Hello everyone, my name is Patrick Frawley and I'm your product specialist for tractors. Today you join me here at our CLAAS UK headquarters at Saxham, and in this video we're going to talk about our CEBIS armrest and layout of controls. So you now join me back up in the cab of our CEBIS machine, looking at the armrest and the control layout and how we'd actually interface with the machine as an operator. So starting with our hydraulics. Well, very simply we have our sliders here at the back end of the armrest, coloured and numbered in accordance to the spool valves at the back end of the machine. We also then have our electro-pilot joystick for valves, for our mid-mount valves. These will change slightly depending on the specs of our machines and depending on the size of the machine that we might be operating. So we might see some of these disappearing and being added depending on your own machine. Very simply guys, we have our positive side, we have our negative side, and we have our float function there as well. Over to the right, we have our rear and front PTOs, very simply. We have our depth wheel for our linkage, so our in and out of work function, which we'll look at in another video. We have our hand throttle for our RPM, and moving forward directly linked to those, we have our engine memory buttons number 1 and 2 here. So being able to save engine RPM. We have a plus and minus key here for fine tuning those engine memories. And then we have our speed range plus and speed range minus keys here as well, which we'll have a look at in another video more clearly. Alongside that then we have our drive mode button, being able to change the drive mode of our C-matic machine. So looking at our C-motion joystick in a little bit more detail. Well, firstly we have our push and pull functionality for either changing gears in a hexashift machine or for acceleration and deceleration in a C-matic machine. We have our right hand reverser function here by pushing this in and then pushing or pulling the joystick depending on what direction we want to go. We have our auto steer engage button there as well. We have our linkage controls with manual up and down on the fore and aft, and then our in and out of work on the up and down. Looking at the buttons that we have on the back end of the joystick, then we have our dedicated sequence buttons, so sequence 1 and sequence 2. And when we are then recording a sequence, we have our stop button here as well. And nice and clear here on the side of the joystick, we can then see our function keys 7, 8, 9 and 10. And over on what you would see on our electro-pilot on the right hand side here is functions 3 and 4 on the left hand side. On the top side of our C-motion joystick then we can see our function keys continues with F1 and F2 here. And on the very front of the joystick then we have our rocker switch for F5 and F6. Lastly then we can see our cruise control engagement button here. As well, if we had a hexashift machine, this would be our headland gear. Over to the right hand side then, obviously with our CEBIS touch machines we have our touch functionality on our screen, but we also still have our direct access keys here for navigating through our various different menus and sub-menus and so on. Over on the back right hand B pillar of the machine then we see some dedicated rear linkage controls. Along the left hand side, highlighted in yellow, we have our various different PTO speeds. We can see that 540 is currently selected, as it is highlighted in orange, and the subsequent white speeds then are available to us as well. We have our PTO brake on the very bottom, and over on the right hand side then we have some linkage controls. So we have linkage up, linkage down, we have our rear linkage suspension, being able to turn that on and off. We can lock our linkage out if we wanted to safely travel on the road. And then we have our activation of rear wheel slip control as well. This wheel slip control is either an on or off function, which we'll have a look at in another video. The dials down below then control our maximum height in allocation with our in and out of work. We have our drop speed, we have our wheel slip control, and we have our draft control here as well. So underneath our B pillar then we have a couple of switches available to us as well. Looking left to right we have firstly our hazards here that we can turn on or off. We have our in-cab isolator which can be automatically sprung, which will automatically isolate our machine after 5 minutes. We have a switch to turn on a 25 amp plug at the back end of the machine. We have our hydraulics isolator here which we'll need to turn on and off every time we get in and out of the machine with a key start. We have our steering valve unlock for automatic steering and for dynamic steering. And we have our CSM switch, which we'll have a look at in a bit more detail in another video. Moving further forward then, we have a dedicated auto stretch brake, which we'll have a look at in another video. We have our front axle suspension up and down, and we have our daytime running lights here, which we can turn on and off. Moving further back into the armrest then, we have a couple of buttons which we have alongside where our arm would rest. Moving front to back, we have a four-wheel drive activation and deactivation. We have our diff lock turning on and off. We have our auto PTO, which we'll have a look at in a bit more detail in another video. And we have our front axle suspension on or off value there as well. Lastly, at the top right hand corner of our cab, we can see firstly our aircon controls here on the left with our manual selection here. Obviously we can have also our automatic aircon if you have it fitted to your machine. In the middle we have our work light panel, so we can have a memory function to this, so we can select maybe 2 front lights and 2 rear lights, and each time we use the power button to turn these on or off, this will remember that selection. Over to the right hand side then we have a couple of more switches available to us, so we can see our dedicated top level headlights. We can also then have a heated rear window switch if we have it fitted to the machine, and also our electric mirrors if we have it optioned as well. So thank you for watching everyone. Please feel free to check out some of the other videos in relation to your own machine, and for any further information don't hesitate to contact your local dealer.